Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Phil Smith-Haynes, and I am the County Administrator here at Saline County. And this webinar is regarding our Clean Water Saline County Grants Program. The purpose of today's webinar is to go over the grant parameters and help to prepare you for the application that will go live on the county's website next Friday, October 22nd. We are recording this video, this webinar, to YouTube. So for the folks who are not able to join us today live at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, they will have the opportunity to view it. It will be posted on the county website either this evening or Monday morning. Would like to go ahead and introduce Tanya Burks. Tanya is with our consulting team through iParametrics, and iParametrics is helping the county with our American Rescue Plan Act implementation. The Clean Water Saline County Grants Program is part of our Phase 1 ARPA framework plan. The Board of County Commissioners set aside $500,000 to support water and wastewater infrastructure in Saline County in accordance with the ARPA interim final rule and the legislation that was passed earlier this year. So Tanya is going to go ahead and share her screen with us and walk us through a PowerPoint presentation this afternoon. We anticipate that Tanya's presentation will take probably around 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. We may have time for a few questions just about today's webinar at the end. If you have questions specific to the grant program, once the application comes out next Friday, we will be taking questions via email, and we will be responding to them and posting all those responses on our website, and Tanya will go over that again as part of her presentation. So at this point, Tanya, please take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you've been able to attend our webinar and our training session. And as Phil stated, this will be recorded and available for future reference. So if we move over anything somewhat quickly, don't worry. We definitely will get it covered one way or another. And so I'm gonna go ahead and get my my slideshow shared here, and then we can get started. Just one moment. Okay. Okay. Phil, can you confirm that my screen is showing the PowerPoint?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. I have a new projector, so I just wanted to make sure I was right on target. All right, so today I will be going over kind of some of the nuts and bolts of the Clean Water Saline County program. The grant guide that is associated with this application has been posted on the county website for a while. So I'm hoping everybody that's watching or ends up watching has access to or has had access to the grant guide, which will kind of help go along with this. All right, so the water grant overview. Again, a lot of this is information that is provided on the county website. So this is more of a kind of a refresher, a top level explanation of exactly why this water grant has come about, what's the purpose, who could take advantage, and how this is going to eventually impact the long-term recovery of the county. The American Rescue Plan Act, which really kicked off just this year, actually in March, has been going full speed ahead. The American Rescue Plan Act does offer what they call state and local fiscal recovery funds to local governments all around the country. Saline County has received and started to receive their allocations of the local fiscal recovery funds. One of the big parts of the planning and the strategy for these local fiscal recovery funds was the creation of a framework that was presented to the county commissioners, reviewed, discussed, and approved. So there are a number of priorities that the county has at the top of their list right now, the water program being one, but keep your eyes out. There's much more to come. So this particular program, there's going to be a total of $500,000 in funding, and that will go across the various projects. Of course, it will depend on the number of projects submitted, the nature of the projects, and just the overall availability of the fiscal recovery funds for the county. And the purpose of this particular grant is to focus on clean water improvements, community water sewer systems. Basically, we're encouraging creative thought process and creative planning as this grant money is put to use for the community as we move forward with the American Rescue Plan. Okay, so with funding, there's a lot to be discussed. But for the purpose of this webinar, we've kind of focused on the key top level elements related to funding. The grant guide that's available also includes a little more detail on the funding. And then we can also provide more information as we move through the process, since this grant process has really just begun. So I already discussed that there'll be a total of $500,000 that's been approved and earmarked for this grant, and how that $500,000 is broken down is probably the more important bit of information. So it says here that there'll be $50,000 or less per project. So we can look at that and do the quick math and see that we're looking at 10 or less projects. But keep in mind that there is a sense of flexibility as we move forward. The county has done a lot of planning for each of the different priority areas that the commissioners have approved. So as things move along and we see how much interest there is in one category versus another category or another category, funds might be available in the future that are over and above this amount. It's just we won't be able to tell that until we actually get the grant programs going. We start seeing applications coming in. So don't feel as if this number is a restriction or kind of the final word. This is the estimated budget number for this grant. And as we move forward through the process and additional funds become available, this is something we could continue to look at more projects. But if that were the case, we would definitely make sure everybody was aware and create a marketing program to give everyone a chance or another opportunity to get their program through. So no more than 10% of these total available funds can be distributed to any single project. And this 10% is pretty much a straightforward number. Most programs, and especially smaller scale programs, there has to be a there has to be a cutoff point. There has to be a, when it comes to, fairness and transparency, we want to be sure that this $500,000 is expended to have the best, most strategic impact on the community, reach more of the community, and aid as much as possible in the long-term recovery. So having this 10% is not necessarily a barrier or a negative thing. It's just to make sure we're giving as many individual projects a chance to flourish versus just one or two major projects kind of taking up all that funding. So this is our attempt at having a greater reach for these water projects. And as I said before, this is all subject to available funding. We don't know at this point exactly what all applications we're going to get. And once we do, that will give us a better picture moving forward of how many projects we can actually do, how many of the projects truly meet the priorities of the commissioners, how many of the applications are complete, eligible, that meet all of the marks as listed in the upcoming application. And the last bullet point is important, but also an item that there is flexibility. So at this point, where we're going to operate this on a reimbursement basis, the disbursements will come at certain periods of time in reimbursements. And again, once projects are awarded, any grant agreement that is negotiated from that point forward, each agreement is going to have its own personal structure. So no two projects are necessarily the same. So these are more top level guidance as we move forward. If an entity has a project that is top priority and is scored well, and there's a problem with the reimbursement basis or the cost, it's cost prohibitive or something like that, that is something that can be discussed. So it's that'll be on a project by project basis. Okay, the program timeline. So this one is pretty much the same timeline we have in the grant guide that's available, but this timeline is really more of a higher level look as far as the timing for each of the individual projects and how those will go. That's not possible for us to say at this moment because each application that's submitted, there will be a project timeline and a project budget, and those sort of estimated numbers are going to come in the application. And then from that point, we can flesh out a more detailed, specific timeline for your project. But at this stage, we're still looking at this as this is the water grant program. This is the timeline that we're going to follow as far as doing this webinar, posting the application, answering questions. When are applications due? When are we going to hear back? When do we need to spend the money? What's, those critical dates that everyone needs to know are provided here in this program timeline. And if there were any dates that were to change in the future or anything that might pop up, the American Rescue Plan is coming from Department of Treasury. As I said before, this is a totally new program. And so Department of Treasury from time to time has come up and, made the occasional adjustment or change. So if there's any major timing changes or programmatic changes that applicants need to be aware of, I'm working with iParametrics as Phil said, and we will be the ones who will be first aware of any changes. And if there's any impacts at all to this grant program or any of the dates, we'll be sure that all applicants are aware right away. Okay, so eligible applicants, this is important because any money, any funding that the county is going to spend that's from the American Rescue Plan Act has to be spent in a very specific manner. The Department of Treasury has passed along very specific guidance to local governments as to what categories are eligible, the nature of the expenses, and the nature of the applicants and the applications. So we're working with the county to ensure that each of these programs is doing everything by the book, All our compliance is in line, our reporting is in line, and the best way to start is to make sure that we are targeting the eligible applicants for this grant program. So on the PowerPoint here, it just breaks down a couple of examples. By no means is this slide all inclusive. So please understand that these are, just a couple of examples of the type of applicants that we expect would apply for this program, or that has applied for other similar programs, water grant programs in other counties and cities around the United States. So if you don't see your particular organization outlined here, don't worry, don't panic. There's many ways to get this handled, and this is just to give everyone just a general idea. Okay, so the eligible project costs, I would say this is probably the most important and the most complex section of this water grant. The plus to the American Rescue Plan Act funding is that there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of focal points, water improvements, sewer improvements, stormwater improvements, all of that. It's very high on the Treasury's list. And so the plus to that is we have a little bit more flexibility in exactly what the projects can look like. So this is a situation where the county is not trying to tell the applicants, these are the kind of projects we want, submit your application. It's actually quite the opposite. What the county is saying is, okay, so we've got some flexibility here. We want to, send us your best idea that meets all of the priorities and objectives, that serves the community clearly, and that could help the county recover faster moving into the future. So this slide is not even close to encompassing all of the costs or all of the eligible project costs and types. So use this slide more of a guide, as well as the water grant guide. Use this as a guide to consider your potential program or the proposed project that you've been working on or considering, and just kind of compare it against some of these costs, and just kind of see where in that picture your project might fall. And though this particular slide is not all inclusive, I can say that if your project hits any of these points, that would be very helpful, and that would be a very good sign that you're on the right track as far as being an eligible applicant, which we've covered. And then, of course, you want to make sure that your entire project does meet that eligibility category. So this will help all of us save time in the future if we make sure that the projects are for sure eligible, and then the application comes in, and then we can go ahead and get it scored and reviewed, and then see if there's funding available. Again, any questions about this entire project, the program? Today's webinar, as I said before, is just more of a high-level review of the application process, of what to expect, what this grant is about, what it's for, who can benefit, who should apply. All of the when, where, why, and how are in this particular webinar, as well as in the grant guide. But part of the process, as you might have seen on the timeline, is that we do participate in a question and answer comment period, similar to the Department of Treasury and how they host a Q&A comment. And so it's a little different. And I'll just explain it quickly before I move through the slides, so that way you can keep it in mind as we're going along. The Q&A is going to basically be, we're going to get questions either from this webinar. There might be questions after the webinar. The application will be available October 22nd. So once that application is live and available, there will probably be more questions specific to the application, to the process. There may be clarifications that your organization needs in order to be sure that your project is eligible. So in order to kind of organize this process and avoid having questions coming from different angles and possibly missing somebody's message or email or phone call, we want to try to kind of do this in a Q&A session, which is where we will accept questions, preferably email, or through we'll have the main contact email on the website when either before or when the application's up. We're still working on that for next week. We want to encourage questions and clarifying issues to come through that email address. So that way we can have one person handling the questions that are coming in and then answering those questions. And then, like the Department of Treasury, what we'll do is we'll post the results of the question and answer on the county website, right along with the application and the grant guide, and all of those information will be there. And then you'll see an additional document that you can click on, and that will be our Q&A. And so the way I'll set that up is that I will work with my team, collect all the questions as they're coming in, clarifications, pretty much, any type of inquiries specifically about the application. Those are top priority. Obviously, any questions are accepted, but time sensitive. We consider the application process to be time sensitive. So questions that come in that are directly related to the application itself or the application process, those are going to get priority, and those are the ones that we're going to put in the Q&A. We want to make sure that if organization A asks a question, most likely organization B and C have that same question. And this way we have an actual document that y'all can go into and actually double check it, maybe get your questions answered. And then if not, we definitely have contact information for us to answer questions and other clarifying issues. So don't worry too much about that, but just keep in mind that application related questions will be best answered and best handled through the Q&A process. So just keep that in mind as we move forward through this webinar, that this is not the only opportunity to see this information. This is not the only opportunity to possibly ask questions or get clarification. So we'll be here along the way. Okay, so the proposal evaluation. This is a process that is definitely given detail in the grant guide. This kind of just explains exactly what's going to happen once the application actually comes in. What's the process? What are we looking at? What's the timing? All of that. So I put some of the key elements here that relate to the water grant program evaluation. When you submit your application, according to the instructions provided in the application, you submit your email. You'll receive an email giving you a confirmation of receipt. So that way you'll have that peace of mind knowing that you're in, you're locked in, you've applied, and you're good until scoring. And of course, submission of an application does not equate to an automatic award or an automatic selection. Just understand that once that application's in and you get your confirmation, you're good to go. And then you'll be notified from that point of any further questions or follow-up or any decision making. And also we will have a hard deadline on when we are actually announcing awards. So it won't be a secret. Everyone will know when the time comes. And the last bullet point I wanted to mention, this ties in earlier to what I was saying. We've budgeted $500,000. The commissioners have approved that amount for the purpose of this water grant. And then once we see the application activity, once we see the nature of the projects, that might either lead to some extra funds loosening up, or we might be able to give projects a little bit larger of an award. It's not something that we have decided at this point that we're going to do, but we just want applicants to know that based upon what we receive and the scoring and how the projects turn out, there might be additional funding. And if there is, we'll definitely let you know. Application submission. I kind of spoke to this loosely. This information will also be in the application, in the grant guide, and then pretty much wherever we can put it. We definitely want everybody to know the deadlines, the due dates, the formats, all of that. And so when it comes time for the application submission, we definitely are available to assist if there's some sort of problem on the electronic side, or you have some sort of specific issue. Just let us know sooner rather than later, so we can assist you, or we can find another method to get your application. So again, we're trying to stay flexible with this within reason. Having these submitted electronically, as you can imagine, helps us keep organized and date stamped and time stamped, and having that electronic paper trail just kind of adds to the transparency, the fairness, just to ensure that all our bases are covered and that all the applications being submitted are accepted and acknowledged and ready to go for scoring. Application review. Basically, this is going to be pretty straightforward, I would say, for most grant programs on this level. We will put together a review council who's going to be comprised of a number of different professionals that have experience in the different areas of water. And so that's a huge perk, having individuals who actually know the systems, they know the county, they know the way things work there, the environmental issues, the priorities. All of that it's a very specific skill set and knowledge set. So that's a huge perk, having individuals who know the game, being there, doing the scoring, doing the reviewing, so you can trust that your application is getting the true in-depth review that it deserves. And so again, here, basically, there's going to be a review process. There's going to be a ratings process. And then all of those applications will be scored and rated. And then the top numeric scores will be the first considered as we move along. The grant guide, as well as the application, does speak to the criteria, the scoring areas, and we also will revisit that later in this presentation. So if you have questions or are curious about the scoring, we will go over that today, and it will be available as part of the application. So I know that's something that's of interest to everyone, and we'll make sure everybody is up to date. So for project selection, again, this is just another way for us to explain that every step that we're taking with these reviews is all tied back to the priority projects, the priority categories that the county commissioners have already discussed, identified, and approved. And so we're following everything to the letter, including with our scoring, that every section, every point, every element of it is being scored based on how well it fits these different categories, how well it fits what Treasury wants to see and what the county needs, based on a framework that we've already put a lot of work into and presented to the commissioners. And now we're ready to move forward with programs like this one. And the last bullet point, I just want to specify with you that it says the scoring process will be used as a tool to assist the final project award. So that is important, because at the end of the day, the actual score itself is not the end all be all. It is more of a tool to help rank the top priority projects, so those projects can be given a closer look and a final rating determined. So just keep in mind that it's not just this one scored this and that one scored that, so that's the best. Because as we all know, on a project by project basis, sometimes you can't tell on the face of a project exactly which project is most helpful or which project is, and that's why we have industry professionals as part of the selection and review committee, because they can go in and dig deeper and really start to figure out which of these projects are going to be the most advantageous for the county. And as promised, here's the scoring criteria. Again, it is long and wordy and all of that, but keep in mind that this particular criteria is provided in the other documents. So it's not something you have to write down at this exact moment and memorize, but I included it in here because I just wanted everyone to just get a quick look at exactly what sort of categories that, there's going to be scoring in and what we're looking at. And so, as you can see through the different criteria, these questions have been aligned directly with what the county commissioners and with treasuries wanting to see if a program is going to be successful with long-term recovery within the water element. So that's why these questions are the way they are. And you'll notice that the questions aren't all just yes, no, basic. They offer an opportunity for a full narrative response, which can take time and might be a little more burdensome than a quick answer. But this is where the rubber meets the road, and projects can really fight for their right to be scored high by going into these narrative responses, and really being thorough and being detailed and really fighting for their project. So keep in mind that, we want to really address these as thoroughly as we can. If you start to work through these categories and you run into issues or questions, those are the sort of questions that we want to see sent to us for the question and answer review period. So that way we can quickly get that turned around and make sure everybody has their clarifications as we move forward. Okay, so record keeping. This one's more of just a general grantee responsibilities section. There's, obviously much more to it than this, but for the purpose of the application process and the webinar, we just want to make sure that any projects that are submitted, any applications that come in, that the entities that submit the application kind of understand what all comes along with this. And iParametrics and in my group, we were kind of the grant administration gurus. And so this is where we come in handy as we work alongside the county leadership and the scoring committee as well, to make sure that everyone who's getting involved in these programs, they really understand kind of the longer term impact of what this is going to do. So if an entity is awarded a grant and signs a grant agreement and moves forward within that grant agreement, that's where all of the nuts and bolts will be regarding record keeping and grantee responsibilities, and kind of a lot more detail about you take the money, what all does that mean? Those grant agreements, that's where you're going to really get all the information that you need. But since we don't have that yet, we've tried to include as much information within the grant guide that's on the county website. And that's where a lot of this information came from in the webinar. Is it just tells you, okay, you got to maintain your records for at least 5 years, and these are the sort of records you need to maintain. And as an award recipient of a federal grant, there's a number of criteria and requirements that might be new to some of your organizations, and so that's where we come in, and we continue to provide compliance and assistance not only to the county, but also to grant recipients. So as these programs process over the next few years, we'll still be here, we'll still be available to answer questions as they come up, and just make sure everybody's compliant, everyone's on track. So no need to be overwhelmed or thrown off by some of the more federal requirements that were in the grant guide, for example. Those are items that are for information purposes for you now. And then as those items come up through the years, we'll be working with you on that. So keep in mind that you're not just given the money and then thrown to the wolves. we continue to work together on it. We continue to make sure everybody's compliant and that the programs are serving their purpose. Reporting, this goes piggybacking off what we just discussed. There's certain reporting requirements in general that the county has to submit as far as any funding that is being obligated or expended from the American Rescue Plan, including this water grant program. So the money will go out to the awarded projects, and then the county will work with those entities to make sure that reporting is handled on time, that the record keeping is handled. And also if there's any issues or questions or problems that the grantee is having with keeping up with the requirements, we'll also be there to provide assistance. So it's one of those situations where it's not a situation until it's a situation. So I just advise everyone as you complete your application to just really review the grant guide as in depth as you can. And then if you have any questions that come up from your review of the application and your review of the grant guide, be sure to submit those to the question and answer, because those are the sort of comments that we want to get out to everybody, before the grant agreements are signed and before everything is set. This is the time now to get clarity. Okay, so this particular contact information, these are the two contacts, the county administrator and myself, for anything regarding the program itself, the documents, the guides, information, eligibility, anything like that. And keep in mind that the county is going to continue to maintain the website. Any updates, any information, the best place to go first is to go to the website and see what's up to date, what's posted. Additionally, there is a update subscription where you can drop in your email address and you don't even have to physically go to the website. Every time something happens, you'll get an email if there's any pertinent updates related to this program or really any other program. So as I said before, with the Q&A kind of set up, the way we're going to do it, we're going to encourage questions and concerns to go through the Q&A email first. And then any other questions or concerns, we're obviously available to answer those and to talk, just for purposes of making sure everything's recorded and documented and that everybody's given a chance to have their questions answered. I'm just going to, again, emphasize the Q&A email is going to be the best bet, just to make sure you get your question answered in a timely way, and in a more transparent way. So that's the webinar material. And so it looks like we're at a good time here. So if we're going to do any questions or anything like that, I'm not sure if if folks just kind of pop in, or how we wanted to organize that to where everyone who has a question has an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. That was great. I will just say on this particular slide, your little graphic is kind of covering the last part of the website. So you can get to it from saline.org/coronavirus, but it's actually saline.org/coronavirus/ARPA is the direct link. So that will get you to the webpage directly. And as Tanya said, there is a sign up as well. You can sign up to stay informed about all the American Rescue Plan programs, not just in water and wastewater. As Tanya said, this is the first one of many. As we said, there's opportunity to go ahead and submit questions to either Tanya or myself, or through that Q&A address. But if anybody today has any specific questions regarding the information that we've presented today, that Tanya has presented today, I would encourage you to raise your hand and we can unmute you and try and address any questions. Just give it a second. Okay, I am not seeing any hands raised right now, but again, Tanya's email and my email are both on the grant guide, which is on the website. So
Tried to, Phil, can you give me the ability to share my screen? I wanted to just throw that last one up one more time with the photo removed.
There we go.
Okay.
Should be able
Here we go. Okay, just so they can get one last look at the full picture.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
It's actually ARPA.
Oh, goodness.
There.
Let's just put it in there. Okay. There we go. Now we
got it. All right.
Just in case.
Yes. Okay, so we said this would be about 45 minutes. It looks like we're at about 41 minutes. So we'll give you back 4 minutes of your day if there are no other questions, and I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised in the chat. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time today. And as we said, this will be posted to our website as well. If you have friends or colleagues who are interested in the program and weren't able to join today live. Thank you, and have a great day. We will sign off.